Good afternoon. How are you today? In my Jefferson report, I can tell you that it's 70 degrees. It's a scorcher. There's a little wind. And I continue to be on walking lockdown. That is to say, I'm supposed to walk more like 20 minutes instead of 60 or an hour and a half. And I can do that. They don't want me to run, and they want me to walk slowly. So I'm going to do the best imitation I can of those directions. I appreciate those who are asking, how am I doing, and so forth. And I'm doing well. And the sound of my voice, they tell me, is because they put a thing down my neck while I was having the surgery. So, it's pretty interesting because the three markings on my stomach where Da Vinci, which is the electronic arm that they use to conduct these less invasive proceedings, has to enter from above where the bruise is. All pretty interesting. I haven't been in pain, well, not serious pain, some pain, because they really put a lot of medication in me during the surgery, and so I probably still have that sedation working through my system. And they gave me a couple of things with light opioids in it, and so I figured for the first few days I'd take it. All my representation of pain doctors has been to the effect that anticipating a pain with pain medication improves your chances of having less pain. So we did that somewhat. And anticipating the pain after an event is also an intelligent thing. So we'll see. I have some pressure, but basically it's kind of, if you're going to have an operation, get Da Vinci or whatever similar machines they have, because it improves the chance of a successful outcome, and that's a statistical truth. So what's going on in the world today? I was thinking of an old Irish joke that I think fits our situation, and our situation is A, in Israel, and B, on Capitol Hill. And both are similar, and both are engaged, each with the other, in a most destructive, declining spiral of misstatements, lies, and hate. So what's the Irish joke? The Irish joke is, what is Irish Alzheimer's? Any takers? I can't hear you, so I assume that you don't think this way. In Irish Alzheimer's, you forget everything but the grudges. Now, if that doesn't fit what's going on between the Israelis and Hamas, I don't know what is. And you have to ask yourself on the Hill, when they're choosing their leadership, why does Scalise drop out? Now, can you imagine the meeting he must have had and what they intended to say, perhaps about his blood illness? You know, he has a condition that he said happens often enough and has good outcomes. And we've seen him walking and acting vigorously. But in politics, they'll do anything these days. And they'll do it without regard for any kind of decency or rigor. So Scalise dropped out as a contender. And no Jacket Jordan is being considered. And he probably did the workout with Scalise and, some others of the 7 others who blocked McCarthy continuing to be the speaker. Now, let's go over to Israel. What's happening there? First of all, we probably don't know, because probably nobody's telling the truth on the air anymore. The Gulf of Tonkin resolution was a lie. it pulled us further into Vietnam. Remember, the Maine had us in a situation in Cuba. We had situations in the Philippines. We had situations in Iraq. And there's an author I favor whose name escapes me in the muddle of pain medication, maybe. And it is that every war starts with a lie that it's in self-defense. Okay, now we have to modify that in the case of Israel. There's no question that this time, on this occasion, there's a very well-planned and hideous attack on citizens and others in Israel. Okay, so what do we have besides that? What's our response? Netanyahu, who has his own corruption cases against him, he is, well, how would you say it? He's unconcerned about anything but power. That is, having the power, being in charge, and that's what he wants to do, and that's what he's doing. So when you have that condition, what can you expect as an outcome? And you may have noticed that day by day, he's ratcheting up, no supplies in. And then there are citizens in there, that have nothing to do with this violence. And some have said, and I don't know if it could be true, it's one of the most densely populated places on earth because the entire grouping has been squeezed that way. So that's what we have. We have this very difficult situation. And the talk as late as today sounds more like we're going to destroy Hamas once and for all time, and there'll never again be anything like that. Now, that's really dangerous language. And I've mentioned from time to time how Hezbollah in the southern part of Lebanon has found a pocket to be helpful to Hamas. And I think they lead the way of what may become a multi-state attack on Israel. And so what we're playing with is a kind of fire that is existential for the Israelis. And it's existential for everyone else. But if the forces of the several states that are not sympathetic to Israel were to decide to be against Israel and to commit themselves, what would that outcome be? So from 1947 through today, there have been changing episodes of how the Israeli state can exist and continue side by side with the other nation states there, unsympathetic to the demands of the Israeli, whom they see as people who just came and stole the real estate that was Palestinian. It's not so simple, but that's part of the hate. That's part of the lie. That is to say, can't we trust anything anybody says in this circumstance? They both want to annihilate each other. Hamas has said it in its principal documents, and the Israelis don't say it in documents, but they're saying it now. And they're telling people in northern Gaza to move elsewhere when there is no place to move to be safe from whatever action they're going to take. And it's hard to believe with this kind of an approach that they have the intelligence to protect those who were taken hostage in the first days of this crisis. It's hard to believe it's only last Saturday. So if you're looking at the table of hostiles, it feels more like World War I than World War II, in which the division among families that ran the nation states at the time, divinely chosen by the gods, all this kind of language. But it was really all about power and exercising that power. And I don't think you can find here, well, I think what you find here is something much more similar to World War I than World War II. Or even if you look at what's going on in Ukraine, there's no question Putin came in and charged, but it does really appear that Ukraine is entirely blameless in this, and they really are suffering. Whereas here we have a long Hatfield-McCoy fight that's gone on to a point where now everybody's saying, I can't forget those grudges. And they've accumulated and aggregated, and they are assessed as worthy of total annihilation. So, okay, that's them. What do we do? What does America do? We're an ally, but are we just sitting on the sidelines watching this unfurl? And is it possible that we agree with Israel that we should destroy all the people perhaps in Gaza as if they were all Hamas? And that may be a belief system. I don't know. I haven't seen their papers and so forth. The commentators and others who are concerned about world peace and comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, and the success of the nations operating together in some sort of partnership and constructive. They're being heard, but they're not being effective. And it's probably because we've left a pivot point behind and we're sailing in only one direction. Now, what does Biden do in a situation like this? Well, I think he starts with private conversations with Netanyahu and others, perhaps through staff so that nobody's fingerprints are on it, and says we got to stop this, you got to draw back from that language. That language goes too far. We are not going to be a passive member of your war crimes on top of their war crimes. That's just not acceptable. But that is where we are. So whatever you think of the merits of the arguments from 1947 to now, you have to say to yourself, what are our values now after all these years? And I think we're going to get a wrong answer. I think we're going to get the answer where Netanyahu he's going for the gold, a vicious, dark situation that would make him the hero of the people for crushing this aggression by Hamas. You look at it, if this is what the world is about, it's a pretty sorry state. It's a pretty terrible vision of America. But it is what we see and what we have. Now, meanwhile, in the Capitol, and as I'm talking to you, I don't know what the outcome is of the, pretense at choosing a speaker. Somebody, sometime within the next several days, months, maybe years, will tell us what that conversation was like with the man who would have been speaker who withdrew. And what is going on with No Jacket Jordan. And I think there's no way mathematically for this to work. That is to say, there's no way mathematically for No Jacket to be the speaker with the vote of his own grouping of Republicans. So he can't expect any Democrat at all, to help him. And because of this impasse on the Hill, we have no way to proceed with additional funding for Israel or for Ukraine, not an insubstantial question. And there are some serious business, like, is the government going to be closed down? And this time, because we don't have an operational Congress necessary to go forward with the resolutions that would spend what must be spent, authorize what must be spent to keep the government going. So, if we ever wondered how the Republicans would ever govern complaining all the time about the governance that was before them, we now see that they don't know how to govern. And there's of all the conclusions one can draw about motivation, personality type, and so forth, that one is irrefutable. They don't know how to govern, because government, in large part, is about negotiation. And they don't negotiate, they pronounce. Now, it's years ago since I worked on the Hill, but when I first worked on the Senate side, there was cooperation. Not on everything, but they knew each other, they cared to help each other. When they differed, they'd raise money based on throwing arguments that were often backed by the truth. But something happened on the way to the present, and it was that by the time I was working in the House, starting in 1996, those meetings, those negotiations didn't happen. When the Republicans were in charge, they said, this is the way it is, that's what's going to happen. But that can only go so far. And there's a hackneyed expression that basically says, politics is the art of the possible. But if you're not prepared to accept the principal premise for democracy, which is voting and compromise, how do you settle matters? And as we inch through the alternatives, we ultimately come to a place where if someone doesn't agree with you, and there's no process in place you respect or play by, throw over the Scrabble game with the words peace and war next to each other, then what do you have? You have chaos. And the only way you can solve things is with violence. Kill the bastards. And that Shakespeare said that about lawyers. Kill all the lawyers. Most of these guys are lawyers. But there are lawyers and real lawyers. You wonder if some of these guys and gals could actually handle a case in court, but they have lots to say about the cases in court. They comment on finance, but what do they know about it? And some of these guys who are elected, you wouldn't want to let them park your car. So we have across the great waters of the Atlantic, from here to Israel and into the deeper canyons of water and national borders, we have extraordinary incompetence, we have great arrogance, we have only one principle: to win. We will say anything to win. The Republicans will say anything to win. Netanyahu has said anything to win in the past. So I'm afraid we're going to see in the days ahead, unless somebody stands up and puts their finger in a dike, that is a reference to a wall, that we're headed toward disaster, something like apocalypse. You know, I heard them the other day compare what's going on to the Holocaust. There's no comparison. I mean, only in the nature of the destroy and kill kind of stuff. But 6 million Jews killed because of their religion. Did we learn anything from that? And maybe there's no way to come back from something like that, particularly when it continues in its various forms. So, what can I add to that? I say we have to watch and see, and if you have any opportunity to talk to anyone or poll or talk about candidates, talk about this. But one thing is certain: if in the general elections this year you waste a single vote on a Republican, you are only hurting yourself, because the Republican Party has left a place of sanity and deliberation, clear thinking, and worst of all, abandoned the fact that we are a democracy, which means that we negotiate, and we are a republic that means we're represented by people who actually represent us. So, as I talk to you from my gravel road with a slight incline that I'm supposed to avoid as much as possible, so I just go slower, then I'll see you again tomorrow, and my throat will be clearer of the tubes they put in them, and I should be on my old road, but maybe not. So, all the best. Good talking to you. Bye for now.